Welcome in to a brand new edition of Musings from the Mountains. This is our video podcast presented by WVSports.com. I am Keenan Cummings, managing editor for WVSports.com. You probably know me by now.
And I'm staff writer Patrick Kotnik for WVSports.com.
All right, let's sum up Oklahoma. Good talk. West Virginia, that was just pretty much what we expected. A young team with a lot of injuries going on the road against probably, if not the most complete, one of the most complete football teams in college football. Didn't work well. I do give the team a lot of credit. I thought Neal Brown got everything he could out of that team for a half. I would not have taken 28-14 at half if you told me 9 out of 10 times.
I mean, it's a common theme that we've seen out of West Virginia over the past three games against Oklahoma, Iowa State, and then even dating back to Texas. That we've seen them. They're in it for that first half, but then you're starting to see the injuries and the departures and the lack of depth at certain areas. You're starting to see that wear and tear in the second half. I mean, there's a drop off in talent in some of those areas, but I mean that was the case against Oklahoma. I felt it was kind of a little, a small victory for them, like you said, Keenan, to be only down, 28-14. But second half, we saw why, Oklahoma has one of the best offenses in the country, and we saw why, West Virginia has had its problems.
Yeah, it comes back to struggling. I think that West Virginia is trying to find itself a little bit, and it's hard to do that with some of the issues they've had with injuries and some of the other things. The one thing I'm interested in to see with West Virginia moving forward is how do they bounce back? And I mean that in a way that you don't really have a choice at this point. You're 3-4. This is a 5-game season. Neal Brown said that today. Obviously, it's a 5-game season with 5 games left, but it's important that this team finishes on a high note. That doesn't mean going 5-0. It's probably not realistic, but you need to at least show improvement. You need to at least make strides, and you need to try to find a couple wins. You go into the offseason 5-7. It's not where you wanted to be, obviously. You can live with that. You can carry some positive momentum. You go in 3-9 and not competitive down the stretch, that makes things tough no matter how much you trust the climb.
Well, really, I mean, this bye week, as Neal Brown mentioned today during the press conference, I mean, it gives them a chance to evaluate where they're at, potentially moving some guys, playing some different guys. I mean, let's face it, I mean, they're across the board at certain positions. I mean, there's a total lack of depth, and we've seen a lot of inexperienced players, be forced out in the field, before they're, physically, matured yet. We saw what a bye week could do, for West Virginia. They had that bye week before the Texas game. Obviously, they had their chances against Texas at home, but just had some missed opportunities. We'll see what it'll do against Baylor. It's definitely not going to be an easy task considering Baylor is undefeated. You're going to be playing on the road with a young team, so we'll wait and see.
It's Halloween night. Anything can happen. West Virginia struggles again in the third quarter. Third week in a row, 30 or less yards for a team in the third quarter. That just can't happen. You're not going to win football games. You're especially not going to beat a team as talented as Oklahoma. But moving forward here, we'll leave Oklahoma in the past, 52-14. Not something that anyone's going to remember if you're a West Virginia fan. So looking forward here, Neal Brown, we met with him today. Some interesting items. We've talked about the injuries. Got some updates on some. Keith Washington is likely to come back. Cornerbacks missed the last 2 games. I think that's obviously a significant boost to West Virginia's secondary. Him being out forced some shuffling. They had to play Josh Norwood at corner for a half, then move him back to safety. Then they got Akeem Bailey back in the second half. So a lot of shuffling in the secondary, and it's not been a good thing for West Virginia. Josh Chandler, he's going to be out. He's missing this Baylor game for sure with a knee injury. He's going to be out at least a month, maybe a little bit longer. So we'll see how that develops. There's more. I mean, did you just keep going down this list, guys? We can talk about all these injuries that are mounting up. You've had guys gone for the year. Now you have guys week to week. Quandarius Qualls is week to week, which is pretty much going to thrust Jared Bartlett in, whether he's ready or not. There's no one left to play Bandit. You've already lost Vandarius Cowan. Now Quandarius Qualls is kind of up in the air. So Jared Bartlett's going to have to play that position, and that's probably not where Vic Koenig wanted to be coming into the year.
And like you said, we saw Dylan Tonker against Oklahoma actually get reps at Bandit just because they were so spread thin. With the Quandarius suffering that injury, then you had Josh Chandler playing Mike. I mean, now with Josh Chandler out, you got to have, I would think you definitely got to have Dylan Tonker go back to the Mike position, and that's why you could see Jared Bartlett. It's something that we've been curious about over the course of the seasons is how if he'll play and how much will he play. It looks like he's going to get his chance.
Yeah. Sean Ryan is definitely out for Baylor, wide receiver who had surgery. There's a chance he comes back. They're optimistic at this point that he does come back before the end of the year, but for now he's out. Going down the list here, trying to remember all of them. There's so many, it's hard to remember some of them. But the thing now for West Virginia is just going to be regroup. I've talked about it already, but they've got to find a way to regroup here. Could get Drayshawn Miller back, the cornerback. He hasn't played a snap all year. He was a guy they thought they were going to depend on in the secondary. Had surgery, going through rehab. They're waiting to see kind of what happens there with him, but there's a chance he could come back. Moving on, quarterback situation. Jarrett Dagey kind of raised some eyebrows when he made the trip. Traveled with the team to Oklahoma. Didn't play, obviously. It was Austin Kendall's show, and Neal Brown made it clear that it's still Austin Kendall's show. He's the starter. This is his football team. He's got to play better. He played admirably in the first half. Thought he held things together. Second half, not so much. Obviously, got to find more consistency. 8 for 31 on the year on passes over 20-plus yards. That doesn't help your run game. Obviously, they can't run the ball, but it doesn't help when you're not able to stretch the field in those situations, too. Allow those safeties to creep up and kind of junk up the box. So West Virginia's got to find some answers with Austin Kendall or maybe Jarrett Dagey down the road. Neal didn't rule it out. He definitely didn't rule it out. He said it's something they're going to evaluate. I do not think it's going to be the White Knight riding in and leading this team to 5 straight wins in any situation. I don't think that's going to happen. I think he's going to redshirt. That's been the plan all along. I think they have big plans for him. Neal said the reason they took him to Oklahoma was just to kind of get him in that type of environment and let him see what it's like in a Big 12 venue, Pat.
Well, and also to potentially, Neal said maybe bring some good luck to them because when Jared Dagey's brother played for Texas Tech, they beat Oklahoma last time they were there. But like you mentioned, I think it's definitely interesting that Dagey did make the trip to Oklahoma. Now I still believe, like you said, Keenan, like Neal Brown said, this is still his team. He mentioned after the game talking about they need to play better around him first, before he can really get a fair assessment of where he's at. Like I said, he's shown some good things, but at the same time, he's missed some downfield passes. He hasn't really been consistent throwing it down the field, and as a result, that's why you're seeing the offense struggle in all phases, especially running the ball with the offensive line. You mentioned they're not able to stretch the fields, and then they load up the box. That's why defenses have been able to make have that much success.
Yeah, you got to be able to run the football too, and when passes are delivered, I'm not saying that Austin Kendall was perfect. But when passes are delivered, you got to be able to catch them, too.
Yeah, a lot of drop passes.
Austin Kendall's, to me at least, at this stage of his career, he's the type of quarterback that needs guys around him to help him out. And more often than not, it's easy to see what Neal Brown's been talking about on that front. I thought it was interesting to ask Neal a little bit about recruiting, too. West Virginia's been stuck at 13 commits for a while. Still evaluating things. They probably got 8 or 9 spots to fill, so it's not as dire as you would be led to believe. They're being selective, too. They want to find guys that are going to be able to come in and help them. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to go full JUCO. I asked him today if anything had been altered, from their original plan since they took over, 7 games into this thing. And he said no. They're going to continue to build their foundation through high school players. Now, they're going to take some junior college players, but it's going to be mostly comprised of those guys they have relationships with already. They're familiar with. They've built relationships over time. They are going to take a little bit more defensive backs than he thought. One of those is definitely going to be a JUCO. But all in all, I think it's encouraging. He's practicing what he's preaching. He's trusting the climb. He has a plan. And I think it was interesting. It was brought up the comparison between Baylor and where that program was a couple years ago to where it is now, and Neal, in a sense, kind of how he has a plan for this program. And he's got to follow that plan, sort of like Matt Rule did in developing the Bears football program.
Something we've been talking about ever since Neal got hired in his introductory press conference that this Brown and this staff, they always have a plan for everything, whether it's game plans, recruiting, especially on the recruiting side. You're starting to see that a lot over the past few months. So really makes sense. Obviously, you got to build your program around high school recruiting, because you rely too much on transfers, JUCO transfers, then you lack depth, you lack development in some areas.
Well, you find yourself where West Virginia's at right now.
Yeah.
I've had people ask me, the way Dana did things. That's fine if you continue to do it that way. If you play it year to year, try to get guys for 1 year, bring them in, that's fine. But if you're going to completely overhaul what you're doing, as what Neal Brown's doing right now, you're going to end up in this situation where you're having to play young guys, having to play guys that probably shouldn't be playing, and it's going to take some time. I think that was pretty clear from when he took the job. I'm surprised that some people have been surprised by that fact, just because they've been so open about it. They haven't sugarcoated anything about this, and I think that's refreshing in itself. But I do think they have a clear, concrete plan. I think they're going to follow it. And I said this last week. I do think he's the guy for the job here. I think he's going to be able to turn this ship around. It's just going to have to take some time when you're relying on young players. Yeah, patience.
A lot of patience.
When you're relying on young players, this is the kind of stuff that happens. But thanks for tuning in again. This is number 34, the Kevin Pittsnoggle edition. Kevin Pittsnoggle episode. Can't believe we made it this far. Thanks for tuning in. If you haven't already, if you're a first-time watcher, go ahead and hit subscribe. We continue to look for ways to improve this and are going to continue to do that. But thanks for tuning in. This has been another edition of Musings from the Mountains.